Lisa? Yes, can I borrow those books? Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. In accordance with state government ethics act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest, appearance of conflict. And public comment, do we have any public comment?
First, you have to approve the agenda.
Oh,
So everybody can review the agenda. And then somebody can make a motion to approve the agenda and then you proceed. The minutes. And then I think the minutes, approval of the minutes is on the agenda.
The minutes, yes.
I move to accept the agenda
As written, any
as written.
needs,
additions, corrections?
Addition, so we do need to add approval of the last meeting minutes. There's not on there and the record.
Is there a motion to accept the amended agenda?
So moved.
All in favor?
I,
Proceed, Chair.
okay, now the public comments.
but the minutes. The minutes approved. Minutes for March 14 and the minutes for August.
Oh, they weren't on there at all. All right, you're doing fine. It wasn't on there. So next you need to see if you can, did everybody receive the minutes? And did they approve the minutes for the last two meetings?
Has anyone received the minutes for the last two meetings?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Any changes,
Corrections,
corrections, additions,
or deletion?
or deletions?
No.
Motion to approve the minutes from the last time and the time before?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we can move to public comment.
No one online.
Okay, we have a review of requests for materials reconsideration.
Okay. I guess the best way to do this would probably just be in alphabetical order of the titles. Everyone, so that means that Bad Sex by Nona Willis is first. Everybody should have received a copy of the initial statement of concern request for reconsideration with the identifiable info redacted, and also a copy of the report from the collection development team. Just as a refresh, since we don't have these happen super frequently, whenever we do receive a request for reconsideration, if the action requested is that the item is to be removed from the catalog or otherwise changed in some material way where it should all be catalog information, then that triggers a full review by our internal collection development team. That's made up of our branch services manager, our technical services manager, and other staff at different levels. They have reviewed all of the titles. So starting with Bad Sex, their recommendation is that the item remain in the collection. And they've given us some information based on the reviews, circulation information, cataloging. And again, our collection development policy, as always, is rooted in the principles of freedom to read and the expectation and understanding that library patrons are ultimately responsible for making decisions about what they check out and choose to read. So they do wish to reaffirm that as a philosophical point from our collection development.
my comment for all three books, including this, is, if the person is offended, don't read them, but don't keep me from reading them.
Mhm.
How did books end up in the collection?
Great question. So a few different ways. We do depend on the staff. Primarily, it's our branch managers, but there are some staff, children's librarians, adult services librarians involved in collection development. It's considered one of the professional duties of the librarians and above. They rely on reviews, trade journals, library publications to get a feel for what's coming out. So that guides a lot of the collection development, especially for things like bestsellers, what we anticipate to be bestsellers. One of the nice things about Buncombe County Public Libraries is that each location has responsibility for its own collection development. And so they're able to make localized choices. So if there was a book that came out that was really specific to the Swannanoa Valley area, it would be likely that the managers at Black Mountain and Swannanoa Libraries would select those items. But it's a mix. So there's some system-wide ordering for certain areas, but for most of the branch-based collection, it's ordered there at the branch level.
For this book in particular, I wanted to just remind the public that the library is not a religious institution, that while we keep the Bible on the shelf and offer it for interested parties, it's not something that we use to dictate or govern the standards in the way that a Christian religious institution would. If this were a Christian library, then that would be the focus of what we do, but instead we are a public library and have to meet the needs of the entire public. I believe in several of these. One of the complaints was that it's available for anyone. And I think that's sort of the point, to be honest.
And to piggyback on what you said, Lena, we also do have a number of really well-stocked Christian libraries in the area as well. If they're interested in that kind of thing, yeah.
We come up with the number of copies that are retained in the library, like how do they determine that?
It's several different ways. If we know it's something that's going to be a bestseller, the latest version release or something, then it's likely that we'll be ordering multiple copies for every location. If it's something that has more specific interest, more niche interest, the number of copies can vary. A lot of cases with our nonfiction titles, especially copies that have been out for a few years, and I'll know that none of the three titles we're discussing tonight are released. They've been in collection for several years. It can depend on how those items have circulated at the branches over the years. We do regularly weed our collection and evaluate. One of those criteria for weeding is, has the item checked out in X number of years, X number of years. So you tend to see back catalog, older titles remain in the collection if they have still been circulating over time. So that would be why these items continue to get some use and continue to stay in the collection. They still circulate.
You know, I may have missed something here. It's more of a process question in checking out books. And so these may be a few basic questions. So how old do you need to be to get a library card and check out books?
Any age can get a library card.
Okay. So any age can check out a book.
That's right.
So could an 8-year-old check out certain books?
Yes.
I don't know that an 8-year-old can get a library card without.
Well, I should, I mean,
Yeah.
parents already have to sign. But
Yeah.
once we don't have restrictions on the borrowing privileges of those cards.
Do the levels of cards still exist? I remember at one point it was a juvenile card and it would like flag if the book, like, I don't know how
Yeah.
it worked, but if you're,
It doesn't.
it doesn't. Okay. It won't keep them from checking out adult films.
For print materials, it does not.
Check out
Oh, for the print.
children's DVDs on children's.
Right, but it doesn't, not the books, it would check them out. Okay.
They're not getting Fear and Loathing.
Yeah, it seems to me that might be,
Mhm.
I can't imagine what's in the mind of a person with a reconsideration request. It's So kind of in the same spirit of if there are films that might be R-rated that the library, you can check it out. And we would have some way of not letting an 8-year-old check that out.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's a process there. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And it is delicate territory. So which books would that be restricted to? So it's more of a question about, are there any guardrails of any sort around certain books
No,
by age?
the guardrails are that the parent or caregiver is expected to be the ultimate decider on what materials are appropriate for the young person
Yeah.
to check out. That is a pretty slippery slope in the library world. And
Absolutely.
there are libraries and library systems that have seen board action and governing body action, forcing them to create restricted sections to deal with that. And in South Carolina libraries right now, and there's a philosophical divide in the library world about it. We err on the side, our policies err on the side of it's up to the individual, and we put a lot of we put the responsibility on the parent or caregiver. We do see one of the common reasons why it makes sense for a child to be able to check out from the nonfiction section is school projects, research,
Right.
so many different topics. It's easy with things like DVDs because there is a national standard for movie ratings. An R-rated movie by the MPAA is an R-rated movie.
We have to follow this regulation.
Yeah, with books, though, what we don't want to get into is asking our staff to decide,
Right.
this is an inappropriate book for this age, that's an
Right.
inappropriate book for that age. We'll be glad to advise you on reading level.
Mhm.
Be glad to advise you on like recommended topics. You've read this book, I'd love to read that. What's next? But when it comes to a decision about the content,
Mhm.
whether it's appropriate for that young person, that's a decision we firmly leave with the parent or caregiver.
Mhm.
It seems that many of the requests are for books that are somehow related to sex.
Mhm.
And for a young person who doesn't understand their feelings, they should be able to go and get a book and read if they're not comfortable talking to their parents. I mean, ideally, it would be a conversation with parents, but we know that doesn't always work.
Mhm.
So, and take this comment with the perspective that I don't have children,
Mhm.
but I know it takes a village to raise kids, but what your children read isn't my responsibility.
Mhm.
It really isn't, it's yours. And if you don't let your kids read certain books, that's your business. But I shouldn't control what your kid reads.
And I can speak to that from the perspective of a parent who's been taking her children to the library since they were. Well, they're twins, so probably 6 months old was the first time I felt comfortable doing it, but one of the things that the Oakley Library does that I think is really cool is they have these printed out laminated pictures of animals or things, and there's a scavenger hunt throughout the library, and they move every week and they get prizes when they find all the things and they're throughout the whole library. So the boys have run literally through the library, and the Oakley Library is very small, but through the whole thing, including the adult section and the children's section and all of the shelves to find these things. And not once have they been tempted to pull something off of a shelf that was not obviously for them. I think there's just something to be said about marketing children's areas to children, and having it be appealing to them, and just recognizing when they're in an area where the books are bigger and they don't want the bigger books, or and to your point of children reading things that maybe they need some experience with or want to learn more about. As a parent, I feel strongly that them living through experiences between the pages of a book is a very safe way to do that, as opposed to going out and finding that elsewhere.
Mhm.
For me, it feels much safer. And that would be my first hope for them if they aren't comfortable talking to me. So as a parent, that is there are things I won't let them read. My son, one of them has anxiety. He brought home a book that was the world's 10 deadliest bugs.
No,
And I was like, what a great idea. He's into science, he likes real things. He was sobbing before bed because he got to the kissing bug and it gave him a lot of anxiety. And I said, maybe this book is not for us. And it doesn't always have to be a hard topic like sex or religion or, things that are difficult. It could be an easy one, like this bug exists and it is too much information for us right now. So we did the right thing. We sent it back to the library at school the next day. So just as an example, that, I think there are things that parents can be doing that will help them. Also, just for guardrails, in most of the libraries, the children's section is very obviously separated from the other ones in many ways. So as I said, even though they've moved around all the library, they know where their space is.
And in the case where a kid gets a library card, we have parental education around, hey, your kid has a library card, so you have a duty, responsibility as a parent to look at what your kids. We have that kind of process.
Yeah, I mean, it's informal, but it's the kind of conversation that our staff have day in and day out with parents that are signing their kids up for cards.
Can I make a motion that we retain this book in the collection?
Seconded. So let me just,
Oh, sorry.
we're gonna do this 3 times today. So procedurally, what you are doing, let me back up. So the director of the library ultimately decides whether or not the book stays or leaves the collection. So what you are doing is making a motion to pass the resolution, and the resolution either has to recommend that you accept the reconsideration request or you deny it. And which is a little hard, but what you're suggesting, did you want to deny this reconsideration request? So is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, you don't need a second, so you can move right into a vote.
The vote is to,
It's to deny the request for reconsideration, thereby recommending to the director that the book remain in the collection.
okay,
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Take a vote.
so we're taking a vote to retain the copies in the library collection,
yeah, to deny reconsideration.
to deny reconsideration.
Yeah, and I, in preparation for the meeting, drafted resolutions for both possibilities. Here is, if this meets your approval, your chairman can sign it. The resolution recommending that the statement of reconsideration dated July 11th, 2024 concerning the book Bad Sex, Truth, Pleasure, and an Unfinished Revolution be denied and the book in question remain in the Asheville Buncombe Library System's collection. It's going to be very similar moving forward. Whereas the Asheville Buncombe Library System has adopted a collection development policy to make available a broad, relevant, and diverse collection of materials with free and open access to the residents of Buncombe County. And whereas, as part of policy, a patron or employee may file a statement of reconsideration of materials that one finds unsuitable for the library's collection. And whereas the policy outlines a process to determine whether material should be removed from the library's collection. And whereas a patron filed a statement of reconsideration dated September 12th, 2024. That's today's date. Or dated July 11th, 2024, for the removal of the book entitled Bad Sex, Truth, Pleasure, and an Unfinished Revolution by Nona Willis Aronowitz. And whereas pursuant to the Buncombe County Public Library's collection development policy, the library collection development team recommended that the library maintain the book in the library's collection because this title meets several criteria outlined in the policy, including current and anticipated needs and interest of the public and contribution to the diversity and breadth of the collection. Getting close. And whereas pursuant to the policy, the Buncombe County Library Advisory Board held a regular meeting on September 12th, 2024, in which it considered the above referenced statement of reconsideration and makes the following recommendation to the library. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this board. Number 1, the Library Advisory Board recommends that the statement of reconsideration dated July 11th be denied. Second, the Library Advisory Board recommends that the library maintains copies of the book Bad Sex, Truth, Pleasure, and an Unfinished Revolution by Nona Willis Aronowitz in the library's collection based on the title Contribution to the Diversity and Breadth of the Collection. And third, that this resolution is effective upon its adoption. Is that acceptable to all members of this board?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chairman, we're gonna make some changes to the dates, but ultimately you could sign this, it will be given to the director of the library to make a final decision.
Okay, next up is the Book of Genesis illustrated by R. Crumb.
I have a question regarding this. I know it's not request for reshelving, but, what is that decimal number? Is that graphic novel?
It's in 2 locations, it's shelved in adult nonfiction. And in 2 locations, it's in adult graphic novel.
Right, okay.
So that 222 number would be the
Right.
the nonfiction one.
Yeah.
I paged through it and yes, there's genitalia and breasts. No worse than National Geographic. I mean, I remember my brother stealing my parents' National Geographics when he was a kid, and I don't think he saw much more than this. And the illustrator is a counterculture icon from the 70s. The old rock magazine Cream, he designed the logo. This is a pretty well-known, well-liked illustrator, and it does have a warning on the cover.
Sure.
I agree. I think on this one, I just want to point out the first thing that it says is concerning is this book is complete blasphemy. I just want to point out that many resources I looked at, including those from religious experts on Christianity, say that it's hugely respectful to the words in the Bible and leaves nothing out, which I believe is not blasphemy, and is actually maybe really respectful of the source material. Unfortunately, the source material does have violence and nudity in it. So maybe putting that into image is the part that is difficult to swallow. There was one quote that I just pulled from a Christian resource on books that said, "It may surprise people, but the Bible does contain nudity, sex, and violence. That's because it contains real stories about real people." So from a Christian expert on this book in particular, it just doesn't sugarcoat what's happening in the original Bible.
There is an introduction by R. Crumb to that in the book, and he notes that he takes the text directly from a King James translation, and that he did not treat this book as parody or mockery. It's just straight illustration of the word that is written in the King James.
So it's essentially an illustrated version of the Bible.
Yeah.
In that case, I would motion to pass a resolution to deny the request and retain.
Oh, I need a vote. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? So the resolution passes.
Like the other one, I have drafted a resolution for your consideration. The caption is substantially the same, so I will skip over that. This is a resolution recommending that the statement of reconsideration dated July 11th, 2024 concerning the book of Genesis, illustrated by R. Crumb, be denied, and the book in question remain in the actual Buncombe Library Systems collection. Specifically, now therefore be it resolved by the Library Advisory Board as follows. Number 1, the Library Advisory Board recommends that the statement of reconsideration dated July 11th be denied. Second, the Library Advisory Board recommends that the library maintain copies of the Book of Genesis illustrated by R. Crumb in the library's collection based on the title's contribution to the diversity and breadth of said collection. Finally, that this resolution is effective upon adoption. Is that acceptable to every member?
Yes.
Chairman?
Thank you.
I have a fabulous collection at home for post-banned books.
And that brings us to our last
title, was per the Sexual Deviant in All of Us by Jesse Baring. This is adult nonfiction title, and we've got 3 copies in Baldwin County Public Library System, 74 copies total across the NC Consortium. So, it's widely held in the systems that make up Cardinal Consortium. And as with the previous recommendations from the collection development team, the team is also recommending here that this item remain in the collection. It's got healthy circulation numbers. The copies have circulated 44, 14, and 16 times, and it's been in our collection since shortly after its release in 2013.
I just have one quick thing on this one, the resource suggested to provide information or other viewpoints on this topic was Bible, which I believe was established does have rape, violence, and sexism. So feels a little idiosyncratic to then offer a book that still has those things when you are complaining about those things.
Motion to deny request for reconsideration?
Didn't vote. All in favor?
Aye.
So the resolution states that the votes will remain in the library's.
This resolution, again, I'll skip over the long caption and skip to the resolution portion. This is a resolution recommending that the statement of reconsideration dated July 11th concerning Curve, the Sexual Deviant, and All of Us be denied, and the book in question remain in the Asheville Buncombe Library Systems collection. Now therefore be it resolved by the Library Advisory Board as follows. Number 1, that the Library Advisory Board recommends that the statement of reconsideration dated July 11th, 2024 be denied. Second, that the Library Advisory Board recommends that the library maintain copies of Curve, the Sexual Deviant, and All of Us by Jesse Baring in the library's collection, based on the title's contribution to the diversity and breadth of said collection. And third, that this resolution shall be effective upon its adoption. Is that acceptable to this board?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Does the individual receive a letter of
Yes.
what the decision was?
So the next step is I take the collection development team's recommendation, the library board's resolutions, I make the final decision. That decision stands for 3 years. So that same book can't be challenged by somebody else for that 3-year period.
Hmm.
And I will respond to the person in writing with that final decision. Just for awareness, so that you have some insight into how things operate system-wide. We do make the request and the resolution and the collection development team's recommendation. We make that information available to our staff to review on our library's internal SharePoint, just so they are aware of the decision-making process and what the outcome is.
Mhm.
So we're done by all questions.
No, you're done with the reconsideration.
Reconsideration. And now we are going into our bylaw revisions.
Chairman, would you mind if I gave some background for the board?
Yes.
At one of the meetings recently, it wasn't the last one, obviously, previous to that, there was some question about whether or not the bylaws could, whether or not you could meet virtually. And the way the bylaws stand right now, you can't, you have to be in present. So there is no statutory prohibition preventing you from meeting virtually. So you can discuss if you would like to adopt a change to the bylaws. If you do allowing virtual meetings, I will draft, and I have drafted something for you to consider. You don't have to decide on it today. Today you're just deciding if you want to allow virtual meetings, and then we can work out the language of the bylaws. But that's the issue on the table.
Does that include a hybrid meeting where some are on Zoom and some are here?
I have to check on that because there was. I think that it has to be one way or the other based on what I've seen. Because if you have a meeting where people are present,
Right.
I'm not sure. But if that's the route you wanna take, I will certainly look into it.
I don't know how other people feel, but. it
Yeah,
might-
this is for your discussion, I'm just the drafter.
Yeah,
It may get us more participation.
That may be true, yeah.
I know the times that when we would have some people online or Zoom and didn't present. That they didn't have the ability to vote because they wasn't present.
That may be because of the previous bylaw.
Right.
Yeah, so. I guess it would be if we decide to go.
I mean, highest priority, I feel like should be the ability to vote virtually, and then if we need to do hybrid, you know, maybe we can work it out, but if not, all virtual would be preferable, so we can actually get it done if people can't meet, you know.
I've been in multiple different settings where it's hybrid.
Mhm.
You have to manage the meeting maybe slightly different to make
Right.
sure those are on video or getting the same kind of experience
Mhm.
in a room, but I've seen that work really well. And at my first meeting, we didn't have quorum.
Right.
This could help with quorum related issues.
Mhm.
Sure.
I also think, I did read all of this, I think there's several really good things that would help with that, members shall maintain audio and video access throughout the meeting, so you can actually see who's on. And the, discussion section, a member wishing to speak shall engage the raise hand feature. I think if there were, and I don't know that this is something that has to be in the bylaws, but if we are doing a hybrid meeting, if there were one person in the meeting who was paying
Wow.
attention to that, so if any hands were raised or, things like that, I would say maybe the only thing that might need to be added is that I don't know, this is just a thought, that can they vote by chatting a yes or no as opposed to saying it? If there is some technical where we can see that they're there, but speakers are not working, or I'm not sure.
Yes, so ideally, we do a roll call.
Yeah.
That's the best, but,
Oh, I understand, but
Yeah.
vote would be
Yeah.
roll call one person at a time.
right, so if they couldn't
Okay.
here, then we can certainly do it that way.
Okay.
What I wanted to do, and I didn't put this in the bylaws, but it's something to consider. Everything that you do is a public record,
Mhm.
so what I wanted to avoid was any side chats amongst members, because that would be part. So it's really just more for awareness than anything else, so if we limited the chat to voting and maybe other business matters, I think I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to weigh in, but I will point out that if we did have a hybrid situation, there are many rooms where we meet where you would not see our
Right.
virtual participants unless you each had your own device where we don't have access to a screen. That's something we could work around, bringing like projectors and things like that into various locations. But it's not going to necessarily be the same as what you might experience in your workplace if you have a hybrid. So just keep that in mind. It is possible. It's not that it's impossible.
Yep.
It's just that, that like ability to be looking here at the camera, but maybe the screen is over there. So
Yeah.
there just may be some awkwardness as there is in any kind of hybrid situation, but just keep that in mind as we change location, that hybrid might just look.
That could just be something that we do as a norm, that hybrid is the last. option.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get something done. Because on a personal note, I love coming to the libraries.
Yeah.
The ones where we get to talk to the branch managers and like find out what's going on, those are always good. So I would always say, like, as a norm, let's try to do it in person as much as possible and visit all of the branches. But I think in our 2024 world, that having a virtual option is important.
Is important.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, the ability to see all the facilities. I don't get the sense, given the hours of meeting, that we're interacting with the staff in any way.
Sometimes they'll come in and like give
Yeah.
us a little download on what's happening at the branch, so we'll get like a special guest.
I think there is a value in that, I'm not sure if we've ever really used that value, and maybe there's some other things we can do as a advisory board to build that insight to the different facilities, because, you know, as I look at the charter, there are some broader facility accountabilities we have as well, and kind of should see those facilities.
Yeah, I know that when I stepped into the chair position, I visit the libraries. And I talk to the managers to see if there's anything I can bring back to us, to our board, advisory board, that might be of concern to Jason. And this is the so. I do think it is important to visually visit the library so that we see how the libraries that we are speaking on behalf of ran, the safety of it, anything that needs updating, if there's damage. You know, it gives us an opportunity for them to have a face to us too, if they know who we are. You know, just not be a name making decisions or advising for decisions that they don't know who we are. It creates connection to, you know, community.
So has this group done some kind of engagement process with the various branches?
Most of the time, we do have meetings at the different libraries, the branch manager and department heads usually come in and they'll give us a update and current pass, and then if you want to, sometimes they'll give you a tour if you haven't been to the library after. And that's really cool too, because this is so different how each library is ran and done. It's really cool how they maximize the space and make it real comfortable for all our communities that they serve.
I do like the fact kind of the time that we meet, you know, 6:30. Those who are working, it's probably after your work hours, and those who are just busy, it's freer, harder to do some of these meetings during the day. So it's kind of tough there. Maybe that's that.
The library advisory board was also heavily involved in the prior facility study and library facility planning that happened 2 or so years ago. Much of the board has turned over since then, but I don't have a timeline right now for what our future planning looks like from the county standpoint, but it will absolutely be opportunity for the board to be engaged in those visits and conversations and consulting and all of that.
Should we make a motion regarding the virtuals?
And I also wanted to raise one more thing. Your bylaws currently require that all meetings happen here at PAC. So if you wanted to make a change to the bylaws, it would be to hold meetings in the various libraries as well as have the option to have virtual meetings.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So it's two things that we're.
Yes, so you would change the location of the meetings from only PAC to all the libraries on a rotating basis or virtual meetings as needed.
Okay.
How would I word that? I would move to amend the bylaws to meet at branch libraries on a rotating basis and allow for virtual meetings.
Okay, second.
Vote.
You call
I call the vote. So, all in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? So the motion passes.
Based on your passage of the motion, I will I will look into whether hybrid is available and I will give you draft language to change the bylaws, and once you accept that, we will put that into place and it will become permanent as part of the bylaw unless and until it's changed in the future. Because of your motion today, the next meeting can be virtual.
I have one other question about bylaw revision. I know that on the library trust, the chair sits in that position representing the advisory board. But can we, like say if a person like who wanted to stay longer after the, like you're not chair and you wanted to stay on the trust because you were only appointed because the chairperson, can we have it where someone on the advisory board outside of the chair can sit too, like it doesn't have to be just a board chair.
So that would actually be a trust question. They decide who sits on their board. So I would raise that with them and they can decide to make that change if necessary. And then you can discuss with your fellow board members who would like to participate.
Thank you. So our next regular meeting is November 14th at 6:30.
Before we adjourn, I have one question just about agenda. How would we go about adding items to the agenda? I don't know if we actually need this necessarily, but do we have to have a section at the end for like new questions, or I don't know if it has to be an agenda item.
Do you have an issue?
No, that is my issue. If I'm just sort of like, oh, what about this random thing?
Question regarding question.
Know in advance, you can have it added to the agenda.
Okay.
Or if it's an actual issue, if it's just questions, you
Sure.
can have.
We can always have that.
Right, but if it's like an actual issue that you think may require a resolution or a vote or something like that, you would move to amend the agenda.
Okay.
And then your fellow board members would consider that.
Sounds good.
Beautiful. Anything?
So there's no other further business. I call this meeting adjourned.
Where is the next meeting?
TBD, so I.
Maybe
it might be
online.
Format and or location to be determined.
Oh,